And we're kicking off with Raw, and before this week's show, WWE announced a Miracle on 34th Street fight between JD McDonagh and R-Truth, but with an unusual stipulation on top of that. It was later announced that the match would also be a loser leaves the Judgment Day match, as Truth has been under the impression for weeks that he is part of the faction. Truth recently redecorated the group's headquarters backstage, which led to a brawl between the Judgment Day, Truth, and the Creed brothers, and expectations were high going into Raw. Raw opened with Judgment Day coming to the ring in full force, and the faction talked for a while before Truth interrupted, still thinking he's a member. Truth said everyone in Judgment Day was looking for a fight, and he needed somebody to beat up, so McDonagh stepped to him, somebody to beat up on. Didn't spot Damian Priest cracking up in the ring. After some more joking and insults, the match got underway, with Truth using the decorations around the ring as weapons before Dominik helped McDonagh gain the advantage as the show went into a break. These holiday street fights are rarely to be taken seriously, as it's mostly done to pop the crowd and give talent a chance to do some comedy wrestling for a change, but this was slightly different. McDonagh and Truth did a great job making this feel competitive while still giving us plenty of reasons to laugh, and after a mishap with Dom, Truth put McDonagh through a table for the win. This meant that McDonagh is out of the group he worked so hard for months to be a part of, but JD isn't going to let this stipulation undo all of his hard work. The Irish Ace has already taken to Twitter to protest that his shoulders were not down for the pin, and in his defense, he does raise a good point. In a photo of the deciding pinfall, Truth's hand could be seen under McDonagh's shoulders, meaning this wouldn't be a legal pin, and JD hopes to catch the attention of Adam Pearce. Whether this will change things, we'll have to wait and see, but this could now add a rematch to the upcoming Day 1 episode of Raw. Truth looked incredibly good in this match, which was the first time he's competed in the ring in a year, and is especially impressive as he's one of the oldest active superstars on the roster. Truth may have a youthful complexion, but he's actually 51 years old, making him one of the oldest superstars, and if you ask him, the oldest official member of the Judgment Day. On December 26th, CM Punk will compete in a WWE ring for the first time in a decade when he faces Dominik Mysterio, and we may have caught a glimpse of Punk's new gear. On Instagram, Punk shared a photo of some of his wrestling gear and tagged both WWE and Madison Square Garden in the post, as his return match will be inside the world's most famous arena. If this is Punk's return gear, it'll be far different than what fans saw him wear in WWE, as this gear is wrestling tights as opposed to Punk's usual trunks. This post was quickly deleted by Punk, which has only made fans more convinced that this is his new gear, as the excitement around CM Punk's in-ring return continues to build. In September, NXT head Shawn Michaels said he'd absolutely welcome CM Punk back, and possibly as a member of the Gold brand, and this endorsement meant a lot to the former AEW star. Fightful Select reports that Michaels' comment during the NXT No Mercy media call didn't go unnoticed by Punk, as they state, HBK said he wanted Punk in NXT, and Punk didn't take that endorsement lightly. Another source in NXT said that they got along as good off-screen as they did on-screen at NXT Deadline. When Shawn Michaels publicly endorsed CM Punk, a lot of people rolled their eyes and said, yeah, I bet. Well, look at where CM Punk has been multiple times as of late, going to NXT, going there when he doesn't have to, and working to help out. Maybe it's just the honeymoon period, but it seems like that endorsement, whether or not that had anything to do with Punk going to NXT, couldn't have hurt. CM Punk reportedly has aspirations of one day having a training role in NXT, and could one day replace HBK as the show's lead, but if so, that won't be for a very long time. In the meantime, Punk will continue to make headlines for WWE, but don't be surprised if we hear more about Punk working closely with NXT talent. On Raw, Seth Rollins and Drew McIntyre had an intense, albeit straightforward back-and-forth promo, with McIntyre sharing some appreciation to Seth for telling CM Punk how he felt to his face. McIntyre also made it clear that after years of sacrifice, he needs to become the World Heavyweight Champion, and Rollins in response saying Drew was holding himself back and, I pity you. This last line led to McIntyre leading an attack on Seth, who was able to fight back and send McIntyre out of the ring, and even launched a suicide dive on him. When Drew slammed Rollins' head against the barricade though, the champ was taken out instantly, and this part of the attack did more damage than WWE had hoped. Backstage, Rollins was said to be slightly dazed and was immediately sent to an in-house doctor for a checkup, with WWE producers and Triple H being noticeably concerned backstage. Fortunately, Rollins was determined to be fine, and there's no heat on McIntyre, with this situation being chalked up to talent getting a bit too carried away. If anything, this attack only builds more hype for their World Heavyweight title match 2 weeks from now on the Day 1 episode of Raw. Interestingly, while Seth Rollins was backstage before his segment with McIntyre, Nikki Cross could be seen hidden in the shadows, once again looking ominous and standing still. There's still no word on what plans WWE has for this bizarre iteration of the former women's champion, and we'll hopefully have some answers soon. As for Drew McIntyre, will he finally become World Heavyweight Champion, or will Rollins retain again? Let us know what you think in the comments below. The main event of Raw was a tag team title bout as the Creed brothers hoped to be the ones to dethrone Finn Balor and Damian Priest as champions. Ivy Nile and Rhea Ripley were both at ringside to support the respective teams and watched on as the Creeds controlled the pace against Balor, but things turned around once Priest made the tag. Priest leveled Julius with a clothesline to take control, and the fans remained firmly behind the Creeds, who have been one of the better call-up stories as of late. The pair feel like a legitimate physical threat on Raw, and have been getting more over with the fans with each win, and this was another great showing for the pair that have only been wrestling for 3 years. Nile took out Ripley at ringside, and it looked like that was going to lead to the Creeds winning the belts, but Priest broke up the pin after they hit their finisher on Balor. After a few more false finishes, the Archer of Infamy scored the win for his team with South of Heaven, but even in defeat, the Creeds looked entirely capable of being the next tag team champions. The last time Brock Lesnar competed for WWE was back at SummerSlam, and since then, it's been believed that Brock will make his return in time for the road to WrestleMania. This week, a WWE production truck was spotted emblazoned with a WrestleMania 40 design, and with Lesnar on the truck, this close to guarantees that the Beast will be on the show. As to when Brock will return, that remains to be seen, though some suspect that he could have a strong showing in next month's Men's Royal Rumble match. Lesnar has competed in some of WWE's biggest matches at WrestleMania, but had a much smaller scale match against Omos this year. And who do you want to see face the Beast at WrestleMania in April 2024? In 2018, Rey Mysterio returned to WWE with a hefty 5-year deal to his name, and now fans can expect the Hall of Famer to be sticking with the company. As first reported by F4W Online, Rey recently inked a new contract with WWE, but it's currently unclear how long this new deal is for. Rey Mysterio is currently sidelined due to a knee injury, an incident involving Santos Escobar, which in reality has allowed Rey time off to have a surgery he's been putting off for some time. This marks another chapter in Rey Mysterio's long-standing association with the company, a relationship that has endured since 2002 and has been a huge success. Rey isn't the only Mysterio to re-sign with WWE, as PW Insider has confirmed that Dominik has signed a new 5-year contract with the promotion. It was added that the contract signing actually took place a month ago, and with how well Dominik has performed, it's no wonder why WWE want to keep him around for years to come. Behind Fightful's paywall, Sean Ross Sapp discussed WWE's contract situations on his Backstage Report podcast, with the plan being for WWE to get into contract talks with talent at the start of 2024. WWE has some huge contracts running up in 2024, including Becky Lynch, Sheamus, Seth Rollins, and more, and Drew McIntyre has still reportedly not signed a new deal to keep him around. Sapp also spoke about Mercedes Mone and added that reports from news outlets speculating about a potential WWE return are accurate. He added, Mercedes Mone is not currently signed to the company, contrary to a recent Sportskeeda post that said she was. Also not true from that post, Fightful never mentioned that Mercedes demanded a huge sum of money from WWE. This made its way around non-reputable Facebook aggregators, which we corrected numerous times on our own page. We've not reported on any active talks between the two sides, only spoke about our opinions on the matter. As of December 18th, we've not been informed of any talks. We have heard that WWE is planning on renewing talks with multiple free agents after the new year, though we haven't been told that she is among them. Mone left WWE on bad terms, but with the changes that have happened since then, the company is a much different place now, and she has a positive relationship with head of talent, Triple H. When Mone left WWE, some in the company felt she'd be back and simply needed to get her New Japan run out of her system, and now it appears like that may indeed be the case. Back to Raw now as Chelsea Green and Piper Niven defended their WWE Women's Tag Team Championships against Kaden Carter and Katana Chance in the latest defense for the champs. Green initially won the titles with Sonya Deville back in July, but after the latter went down with an injury, she was replaced by Niven. While Chance and Carter are a talented duo, no one expected Green and Niven to lose, given how popular they have become with fans during their time as champions. Instead, though, the titles did change hands, and while there could be multiple reasons behind this week's title change, one reason could be attributed to a former WWE superstar. This ex-superstar is none other than Mickie James, who had both a friendship and gruesome rivalry with Green in Impact Wrestling, with Green holding a 2-1 lead in their 3 matches. Hence, WWE could book James to return at the Royal Rumble 2024 and potentially begin a feud with Chelsea Green, and while this is speculative, the idea would make sense on paper. Green is reportedly set to receive a major push, and a victory over James could be the very beginning of this push, and this isn't the only WWE mention of Mickie James. Fallon Henley in NXT recently spoke about wanting to team with Mickie, and it's interesting that WWE are allowing talent to speak about someone who's seemingly not with the company. James has even responded, saying she's open to the idea, so signs are pointing to a WWE return, one that could also see her rekindle her Impact feud with Green. On Raw, Niven looked sad at the loss, while Green was having a breakdown as she was seen crying at ringside and whimpering, clearly in distress, while the commentators were clearly excited. This match ends Green's reign at 154 days and Niven's reign at 126 days. And what did you make of the title change on this week's show? Let us know in the comments. Raw also saw Gunther retain the Intercontinental Championship, but it wasn't as easy as the Austrian expected. The Miz stepped up his game and almost had the Ring General beaten following a second rope skull-crushing finale, but the champ wisely rolled from the ring. The finish saw Gunther regain the momentum and deliver 2 powerbombs to secure a huge win and ensure that The Miz can never re-challenge the title while he holds the belt. The Ring General did a fantastic job bringing out the underdog qualities in the A-lister, and The Miz did an equally good job making himself look like a real threat. Post-match, Gunther announced that he was taking a break from WWE to recuperate, and in a tweet, Triple H said the champion was getting better every day. The game also made note of his almost 600-day title reign, and alongside undisputed WWE Universal Champion Roman Reigns, Gunther is in the midst of a historic title run. 2024 is expected to be a defining year for the Austrian, who is considered by some as a favorite in the Men's Royal Rumble match. And who do you think should win next month's 30-man match? For years, The Undertaker competed for WWE, and as one of the company's top stars, could often be found working the annual Tribute to the Troops events in the Middle East. In 2006, WWE headed to Camp Victory in Baghdad for its annual show, and the flight had several superstars including The Phenom, JBL, Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin, and a young CM Punk. Speaking on his 6 Feet Under podcast, The Undertaker recalled the flight and Punk being ready to prove himself as a legitimate fighter to the rest of the boys. He said, "We're drinking, everyone's carrying on. Somehow or another the discussion comes up. I don't know if Vince instigated this one or not. Bradshaw was on this flight too. The topic comes up as we're on the way over. CM Punk, he fashioned himself as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. Someone broached the question, you did jiu-jitsu. How long do you think you could last with one of these 2 wrestlers? It was Bobby Lashley who wrestled for the Army and Shelton Benjamin who wrestled at Minnesota. 2 high-level amateur wrestlers. To Phil's credit, he said, I'll tap them out. That was about all it took. Now the pot begins to really get stirred. Shelton at this time, he didn't drink it all. I remember Vince pouring a styrofoam cup full of wine and Shelton just gulps it down. I honestly can't remember who went first. There's not a lot of room, it's tight, but there's enough room. I want to say the first match lasted about 47 seconds. The other was sub 40, where they had taken him down and pinned him. He didn't back down, but my goodness, it was like blood in the water and 2 great whites circling. They could not wait, they didn't disappoint. That was another fine case of Vince McMahon's shit-stirring. Years later, Punk would compete in the UFC and would similarly have poor performances in the Octagon, while Lashley would fare much better as a fighter for Bellator MMA. Now Lashley and Punk are once again in the same company, but after their shoot fight back in 2006, we expect CM Punk isn't jumping at the opportunity to fight Lashley for real again. Last weekend, CJ Perry didn't appear on AEW Collision or make her CMLL debut as planned, and she would later explain that an infection in her arm forced her to miss both shows. The infection had begun in her finger before traveling up her arm and resulted Perry seeking medical attention at the ER, and now we have an update on her case. Perry disclosed this week that she has spent over 50 hours in the ER and hospital. Unfortunately, the infection has worsened, and she is now scheduled for surgery. Perry seemed to be in a positive mood, but it must be difficult considering the horrible situation. Hopefully Miro is around to provide support for her during this time. Perry will be missed on AEW television, but she needs to get over this issue. Obviously, a hurt finger is not supposed to spread to this magnitude, and we're wishing her the best at this time. Now, Nia Jax has had an interesting run since returning to WWE, and she hasn't really been positioned as the next Women's World Champion, but will have a huge match in just 2 weeks' time. This week, Jax continued her feud with Becky Lynch and teased bringing in a referee and making the match official 5 years after Jax infamously broke Lynch's nose in late 2018. Surprisingly, the pair have never faced off one-on-one, but that will soon change as the pair will finally have their singles match on the Day 1 edition of Monday Night Raw. It'll be interesting to see how this match goes, and if Lynch wins as expected, it could easily put her in line for a shot at Rhea Ripley and the Women's World Championship. Lynch has been kept away from the title picture for some time now, and with next week's Raw a highlight reel show, WWE did their best to build towards Day 1 on this week's live show. On Raw, Shinsuke Nakamura was in a festive mood and was set to read a poem to the fans all about his adversary Cody Rhodes. The poem itself was titled The American Nightmare Before Christmas and was a brutal takedown of the popular superstar. One part of the poem certainly took fans by surprise, as Nakamura said, "You bastard, you cancer, you prancer, you nitwit, you're vomit, you're stupid, your father was inbred." Frankly, it was a shock that these comments were allowed to make it onto WWE programming, and Cody was understandably unhappy about what was said. On last week's show, the American Nightmare almost had Nakamura beat before the Japanese superstar used the mist, and Cody was in a foul mood on this week's show. Rhodes cut Nakamura's story time short with a backstage attack, leading to a brawl and security eventually separating the pair. It's going to be interesting to see where or when this feud ends, as Cody made it clear that they're not done and is looking to gain momentum ahead of the 2024 Royal Rumble match. Rhodes was the first man announced for the match and is considered a favorite by many to win, but with CM Punk also announced, we'll have to see if Rhodes is able to overcome the odds next month. Cody Rhodes had plenty to do during this week's episode of Raw, but also had a special moment for a fan after this week's Raw went off the air. At certain events in the past, Rhodes has given away part of a table which has been used in some kind of stipulation match, but with the holidays coming up, Rhodes' giveaway was more seasonal. Rather than give away a piece of a broken table, Rhodes gave a fan an entire Christmas tree in a hilarious moment that got a loud pop from the fans. This is the season for giving, and Rhodes is certainly a charitable person, as seen in this fun segment that played out after Raw. Back to the show, as Jey Uso faced Ludwig Kaiser on this week's show after he came out to save Kofi Kingston, who had been handing out Christmas presents before being attacked by Imperium. Jey had a brand new Yeet shirt, which saw the superstar's catchphrase in a slightly blurred format, playing up the brief period in which WWE couldn't use the words and censored Jey's shirt. During the match, Kaiser sent Jey to the mat with a shoulder tackle, and at one point, Giovanni Vinci got an attack in when the referee wasn't looking. Jey tried to fight back but seemed to be blocked at each moment, and after he missed an enziguri, Kaiser sent him out of the ring and took him out with an uppercut. Back in the ring, Jey finally started turning the tide with a series of strikes and a super kick, but when he went for the splash, Vinci interfered again, which brought out Kofi Kingston. The former WWE champion nailed Vinci with a Trouble in Paradise, and Jey hit Kaiser with a spear and a splash, ending what has been an unfortunate streak for main event Jey. Despite the high-profile role he's had on Raw, this is Jey's first win on the Red brand, and marks his first win in 136 days, and hopefully Jey won't have to wait another 136 days before he gets his next W. After going to Pearce to request a match, Akira Tozawa found himself in the ring against Ivar, and while he came out of the gate with a flurry of strikes, Tozawa was eventually overpowered by the Viking. This match was better than expected, but still a glorified squash, with Ivar getting the win with a middle rope World's Strongest Slam. On January 13th, Impact Wrestling will officially rebrand itself into TNA, and there are plenty of big plans being made for the relaunch. TNA Wrestling will feature some top names including Will Ospreay, Kushida, and Zack Sabre Jr., and now another name is close to being signed to a contract. On Busted Open Radio, TNA President Scott D'Amore teased that he was finalizing one of the biggest signings in TNA, but gave no clue as to who this mystery person may be. What we do know is that TNA Wrestling will feature Jade Chung as the company's official ring announcer, and she has made several appearances for the broadcast team in the past. The excitement around the TNA relaunch is massive, and this is perhaps the most attention Impact has had in years, and we'll have to see what the new era of TNA looks like in 2024. Since coming to the main roster, Rhea Ripley has proven herself as a force to be reckoned with, and it's not just the women's division that has felt the Eradicator's wrath. Ripley has repeatedly shown her strength against the men of Monday Night Raw, much like Chyna, who Ripley has often been compared to in the past. Speaking to the Western Australian newspaper, Ripley spoke about the comparisons to the Ninth Wonder of the World and how her competing with men may have affected the women. She said, "I don't think getting compared to Chyna is a bad thing at all. I think it's amazing. I'm actually very proud of that fact. The only problem that I'm having at the moment is that I've done all these amazing things with men that have been so good to me and let me do these things. While I was doing that, the women's division was suffering a little bit and not getting built the right way. It was at a weird time where things weren't certain and things were changing constantly, so the women's division suffered a little bit, and now we're trying to build it back up. Obviously, we have like our Becky Lynches, we have Nia Jax, we have our Charlotte Flairs, our Asukas, all of that, but it's time to make some new stars as well, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to make new names and get the women's division rocking and rolling. So there's lots of great challenges, but for me, I love doing everything. I love beating the men up, I love beating the women up. It makes me different, it makes me stand out, and it's a lot of fun." Ripley has beaten every woman put in her way, and while that's great for her career, there have been complaints by some fans that WWE has essentially buried their entire division in favor of Ripley. At this time, it is unclear who will dethrone Rhea, if WWE has a person in mind at this time at all, and what do you make of her comments? Let us know in our comments section down below. It was just a few months ago that the wrestling world lost Bray Wyatt, with his passing coming at the shockingly young age at 36 years old. Wyatt is the second member of the Wyatt family to pass away terribly young, as Brody Lee passed away in December 2020, and recently, Seth Rollins paid tribute to both men. At an event in Lee's hometown of Rochester, New York, the World Heavyweight Champion gave another stellar in-ring performance, where he told the crowd, "The mood is set. Anybody got any fireflies among the audience tonight? I see a couple. I see a few now. It's that time of year, loved ones are always on our mind, man. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. The Fireflies were synonymous with Wyatt's career in WWE, while Lee would often use a yeah during his time competing as Luke Harper. These two may be gone, but clearly not forgotten, as Seth Rollins ensured the pair were remembered at this recent Rochester live event.